All right. What's going on? Star Trek Picard, Season 3, also known as Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 8. Unofficial Season 8, but Season 8 in my head canon. All right, so let's talk about this episode, Part 7, called Dominion. All right, before we get into our our actual review, let's talk about this episode. Uh, well, I have my audience in the back here. I don't know if you can see her. Just woke up. Just woke up. Anyway, all right. So Paramount, Alex Kurtzman yesterday announced new project coming out uh, for Star Trek. We've got Starfleet Academy, is what it's called. I guess under the leadership of Trek right now, it's not far fetched to think that it's probably the CW's Starfleet Academy. Uh, Looking at starships and Starfleet emblems and seeing all of the cool stuff that they could do with Star Trek, no, this just let's just do our own thing. And the problem with Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek, which I don't have a, I mean, I listen. I understand, like Star Wars, every franchise has, and I don't want to say uh anything negative about the fandom, but there's they're passionate, you know. Um Not that, none of that, the T word that goes around a lot. Describing stuff. When someone doesn't like my opinion, oh, that's toxic. No, just shut up. Just go away. All right. Um, I like people having differences of opinion, talking about things and shaking hands at the end of the day, agreeing to disagree. And frankly, in the Twitter world, we don't live in that kind of atmosphere as much before social media. Well, essentially, it's before like Twitter and all that shit, like when it was just MySpace and Facebook, shit wasn't that bad. People were like, celebrities were celebrities. They shut the hell up and they just did what they had to do best, and which is the profession that they signed up and they just they suffer and bleed for. Okay, so this is not it's not bad to say this is their job. This is what they do best. It's great. It's great. Do your thing. But there's a lot of people out there also that, like you guys out there, that want quality stuff as opposed to quantity. And even the diehardest of the Kurtzman Trek, we may disagree on things, but you all have to admit that they're trying to turn this franchise into Star Wars. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There's just no way. They're two very different types of franchises. And with Star Wars, you had the opportunity to go through pockets of the galaxy and explore characters, planets, all of those things, and essentially have what Roddenberry called a Western in space. Star Wars is more of a Western in my eye, I think, when you've got pirates and gunslingers and, bounty hunters and all of that stuff. Star Trek is military. Star Trek is a space military that is a space opera in a sense. And I feel like with today's Trek under their leadership, they're trying to rework the wheel when it doesn't have to be reworked at all. All you have to do is take what you've had before and just steer it in a direction where we understand that, yes, you can add your own flavor of creativity. Keyword creativity, but also stay true to what has been consistent in the DNA of Gene Roddenberry. And a lot of that has been stripped away, unfortunately. Now, again, if you like Star Trek Discovery, if you like Strange New Worlds, if you like any of those programs, that's cool. Great. My friends, unfortunately, they love Star Trek Discovery. I don't. And I'm glad. I'm glad. I wouldn't trust them with directions, is what I'm saying. But uh yeah, I mean it's great to have that discussion. So when it comes to this season of Picard, in the cesspool of things, there is one golden child, for me at least, and that is this season of Picard. So this is something that my friends who love Kurtzman Trek, I don't. This is something that I am now enjoying. They are enjoying also. We're all enjoying this. So it's kind of fun and refreshing to text your friends. People, my brother, that there is, that this is something, we're just nerding out over this, this season of Picard. So it's fun. It's been great to be in the hype of things, and all of that stuff. Um, of course, when the content is good, has to be good. This season so far has been knocking it out of the park with, uh, in my opinion, a banger episode every time. It just gets better and better and better and better. So, except this time. Except this time. What? You've been liking this show. No, we can't lose you, Josh. Okay. First off, this is an okay episode. It's an okay episode. I would watch this episode over the last episode of The Mandalorian that just passed. Um, this episode is light years better, superiorly far better than any of the episodes of The Mandalorian that happened this season. Season 3 of The Mandalorian, which is essentially the Bo-Katan show now. They should change the intro and the title of the show, which I do love Katie Sackhoff. Don't get me wrong. I would rather watch a Bo-Katan series over a Mandalorian series now at this point. So perhaps they're going in a right direction. But you know, whatever, whatever. But no, this episode, okay. This is an episode with, obviously, there's a lot of exposition here. This is the episode, and I believe the next episode will be pretty much all one thing. They just divided it up into two parts. There's a lot of story, much like last episodes. There's a lot of story in this that we all have to kind of follow along, but nothing too insanely convoluted. But just it it told you enough about the villain, which she's not really the primary villain. I kind of got that episodes ago when she cuts her hand off and a little blob comes up in front of her. It's a face blob, and you're like, "Oh, that's the main villain." So Vatic is pretty much a henchman. Uh, it's that villain trope, where like, oh, it's the villain. Oh no, they have a boss, that's been doing things behind the scenes, kind of like Bane from Dark Knight Rises. Now, is Vatic a good Star Trek villain? In my opinion, eh, well, eh, much better executed motive than, let's say, past Trek villains, namely Nero from the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek reboot, which is a flea boot. Um, Nero's, I can't, I remember watching that movie, and I remember just soaking up the hype because Star Trek has never had that kind of attention before. So I thought, gee, this is cool. For many years, you really don't go back and watch a movie and knowing the kind of world that we live in this industry, in the Hollywood industry, where things start to take a shift. I disliked J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movies more when Discovery was released because I thought, well, instead of adding on more to the problems that those movies had, they just double down, triple down, I mean, quadruple down. And it just makes those movies, in my eyes, the start of all of this. Now, if none of this existed, would I go back and watch the J.J. Abrams movies and go, gee, they're actually not so bad? No, because going back and watching those movies, I can't sit here and say, well, I fully understand Trek 100%. I enjoyed it. I was soaking up more of Star Wars more than anything. So I really didn't pay attention to Star Trek. Like Doctor Who, I really didn't pay attention till you start watching documentaries, until you start watching um, specials and reading books and reading all of these things about good versus evil and all of this stuff. Understanding where screenwriters were coming from when it came to telling these stories, especially for Next Generation, but also more so the Star Trek novels. I enjoyed those, and I started taking on those novels, and I started reading those and watching the original series, watching Next Generation, watching Star Trek Voyager. Deep Space Nine was something that I binged watched 2 years ago for the first time from beginning to end. And the consistency in the lore of Trek. Now, not all the incarnations were knockout hits. Okay, there's Enterprise, which I'm not going to sit here and say it's, oh well, because it's better than Kurtzman's Trek, it's the best. No, it still has problems. That show has its issues, but it's more Star Trek than anything that has been put out thus far, with the exception of Picard season 3. That also kind of suffers a little bit of the Kurtzman Trek issues, but I will get into that later, especially in this episode. So I can't stress enough, like I can't tell people what is true Star Trek because there's a generation, there is a group of people out there that watch the new stuff and this is their Star Trek. So who am I to tell them this isn't what it is, you know? It's just my opinion. My opinion. It's one person in a planet. But I'm sure there's people out there. I know there's people out there that share the same opinion as I do. I share the same opinion as they do. It's a no coincidence. Star Trek 2009. The problem with the villain that's similar to Vatic in sense. This is why I have issues with the motivation, but the motivation is executed more, I guess, properly in this case, but still kind of weird and strange and nonsensical. Nero went back to the 23rd century because his planet was destroyed. Shit happens. And it was going to happen anyway, right? That's nature. His planet gets destroyed by a supernova. For some reason, without it really being explained, except that we just have to just accept it because movie villain, he blames Spock. We don't understand why. So because of that, they're like, oh, we have to get Spock in. So they got Leonard Nimoy to come back in. Poor Leonard Nimoy. Yeah, it's great to see him in the years again, but at this point, I'm like, it didn't matter. So instead of just going back in time to warn your planet that it is, for its doom, okay, in 100 years or so, you wait 23 years for Spock's arrival to come down to do this to Spock and to blow up his planet and show him that. Do you see where the stupidity is? So, and that's not far-fetching it. That's not flexing it. That's not mental gymnastics that I'm using. That's what it was. Nero, a villain who you're supposed to feel somewhat sorry for. I mean, villains are not. I mean, villains have to be three-dimensional. They're not just so black and white, right? A very well-written villain is at that, for that matter. So you would think, no, he went back in time to kill Spock for what? How was it the Vulcans' fault for pretty much a Mother Nature, or not Mother Nature, but for something like that to happen? You see what I'm saying here? So, unlike Nero, Vadic's execution in her vengeance, okay, which every Star Trek villain has to, ever since fucking Khan, it's vengeance. Um, that's why I appreciate motion picture, Voyage Home. It's just, yeah, Undiscovered Country. I mean, look, all the Nick Meyer films were great. They did it first. Um, but it's always someone out for revenge. But Vatic, she is a changeling who, in the past, was experimented on. This is the thing that I was kind of like, okay, it's a little. Here comes the Kurtzman trek, the nihilistic trek, in a sense, where Starfleet greenlit these experiments on these changelings. And Amanda Plummer, who plays Vatic, she also plays the scientist who you see working and experimenting on the changeling. I mean, it's pretty gross. I mean, they're picking on it, they're burning this, they're doing all this weird shit. And Vatic, um, the changeling itself, kills the scientist who looks like Amanda Plummer and forms like this thing, and stabs her right in the back, and all that. Kills her. Takes the form of that scientist. And therefore the revenge plot of, oh, Starfleet did this to us, we're gonna go get back at them. Yeah, it's a very, very been there, done that kind of premise. Um, but is it executed well? Is it enough to compare to Nero? I would, yeah, I would take Vadic's story over, because it makes more sense. But does it mean it's good? Not really. I'm not going to settle for mediocre and say, okay, well, just because it's kind of good and it's better than that, I'm going to say, we're not going to sit here and take mediocre. Okay. This is old school, baby. All right. I'm going to tell you what's good, what's not. Vatic is ain't that great of a villain. She's kind of she's a mustache twirly villain, and that's what I said in my, I think it was my very, very first, or no, my second review for this show, and I was correct, right? Wasn't I correct? Yeah. Anyway, it's Sadie, ladies and gentlemen. Shadow and Daisy are sleeping on my pillows. Anyway, so we get, you're supposed to kind of feel sorry for Vatican in a sense. You feel bad for it, which I do, kind of, sort of. But you don't necessarily agree with the things that she's doing or the choices that she's making. The thing is this, though, is that why bother if you guys are all changelings and you guys can do, you guys can like shift your arms into knives and weapons. Why didn't they just do that instead of using guns? Imagine how crazy shit that would be, to do that. You know, I don't understand. It's whatever. It's Alex Kurtzman's trek right there. Because guns are cool. Because guns are effective. Guns are the problem. So we have to use them as much as possible to show how bad they are. Okay. But I understand Alex Kurtzman really didn't have any say so for Terry Metalis' show run. But when you are still working for your boss, you kind of have to keep it in the confines of what's been done before. So it's why it kind of like aesthetically wise, it looks very similar to Star Trek Discovery. It looks similar sometimes to maybe Strange New Worlds at times. Strange New Worlds really turns up the 60s colors, the reds and all of that stuff. I mean, listen, all I got to say is this. When Alex Kurtzman tries to rework the wheel of the classic Enterprise, okay, then you have Terry Metalis showing the same class starship in a previous episode of Picard. Tell me if this isn't a middle finger, creative middle finger to Alex Kurtzman's Discovery and Strange New Worlds. Picard gives a middle finger to Strange New Worlds because you've got the USS New Jersey, which made an appearance, which is essentially the same exact ship that we see in the original series. Okay. It wasn't a refit. It wasn't what the fucking mess that you see the Enterprise that the Discovery made. I mean, yeah, sure, it looks great. It looks beautiful with the colors and the lights and all that stuff. It looks like a real version of it, but it's not the version. It's not that. It's not. It just isn't. It's objectively, it's not. Okay, you can't argue about it. I will not buy the toy of it. I will not buy it because it's not. That's not the Enterprise. That is a version that someone was trying to somewhat rework the wheel in a sense. I'll give J.J. Abrams credit for this one. People are saying, "Well, J.J. Abrams is the same. They're trying to rework the wheel on the Enterprise." Here's the thing. As much as I despise those movies, the credit I'll give them for is that if you're going to go to an alternate reality, that's an Enterprise in an alternate reality. It looks like shit, but it is an alternate reality version of that Enterprise. Um, what Kurtzman did with the Enterprise, it's not atrocious. Like I said, it's beautiful to look at, but that ain't it. That's not what Pike's ship. You don't go from that to that. What you see in the original series, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. And that is the problem why you make prequels in today's world is when they try to rework the wheel. I've been saying that phrase a lot. It's because that's what Star Trek has been trying to do is rework the wheel. And when you see the USS New Jersey in its form exactly untouched, just not no difference. It is the Enterprise from Star Trek in the 60s. It's not the Enterprise you see on Strange New Worlds or in Discovery. Terry Metalis kind of went, you know what? No, let's not go there. Again, it everything that I see other than this show is Elseworld stories. Okay, for me. Okay, it's not canonical. Christopher Pike from the original series ain't the Christopher Pike in Strange New Worlds. That is an Elseworld story. To me, it's another alternate reality. the Kirk that's about to be on that show, that ain't my Kirk. That is not. I don't know who that is. That is some guy. He just happens to be named James Kirk. Um, Again, if you like the show, great. I'm happy that there are Trek fans out there that can celebrate Star Trek. Will I tell you not watch the show? No, no. I just don't care for it. I know there's going to be some people watching this, and they're going to be like, "Oh, you're going to have to. You have to watch it." These these passionate Trek fans that come on my page and talk Star Trek. If you love Discovery and you want to share that with me, even though I don't like the show, go ahead. I'll celebrate Star Trek with you. I will. I won't ever make you feel dumb. Uh-uh. It's not my job. I hate it when people do that. Because there's things that I don't like that people like. I get it's all the same, whether you like it or you don't. But I like this season of Picard. But there's a lot of things in this episode that reminds me of why I don't like current Star Trek. And there's a lot of things that they kind of sort of do, but not really. Is it that word that everyone uses it to work for everything? Is it woke? No. No. This series so far hasn't been. Um we do see Jack Crusher and Sidney LaForge. They partner up. We see them trying to take on these changelings when they were on board the Titan. Sidney LaForge didn't go off on her own and make Jack look stupid, or every white person on the Titan look like an idiot, or every white guy look like a moron. Let me handle this. No, she is a character that is well written, be it at times in this episode where you're like, huh? And it's not because of Sidney LaForge. It's the writing choices, perhaps, maybe the editing. There's a part where the changeling has a gun and he's literally pointing it at Sidney LaForge, and she's running towards the camera, and you're thinking, holy shit, this is it. He's gonna pull the trigger and blow her brains out, kill her, whatever it is. Sidney LaForge is done. He's got two daughters. Holy shit, why didn't I see this coming? But he doesn't. The camera is literally on this guy for about 3 seconds as she's running towards the camera, and he doesn't pull the trigger. And I'm like, that's got to be an editing mistake. That's got to be that's just, if I was Terry Metalis and I saw that, I'd be like, ooh man, that got greenlit, and now that's there. I can't do anything about it. I don't know, unless I missed something. I watched it twice. Yeah. Anyway, but I liked Sydney. I like her character. I do. I enjoy her character. I like that um she feels natural. She is There's character growth because you meet her as this ensign who's just all smiley and just like, hey, yeah, this is cool, but now she's dealing with some real shit in a space adventure, literally, which is cool. And so she's doing all this stuff, and it's Geordie LaForge's daughter, and you can tell that she is the one that's going to be, she's the one that can get into combat and all this stuff. Like her character is growing, is what we're seeing throughout these episodes, and I like that. Um, because by the end of this series, if she's alive, you know, uh, she went through a really crazy, thrilling space adventure to where she's mentally prepared, mentally ready for Starfleet. She is, like her father, someone who will put her life on the line for the ship, for the crew. all of those things, much like Geordie LaForge. So I like those traits. And what scares me is that if they decide to spin off a show with these characters, you're not going to have Terry Matalas writing these characters. You're going to have Alex Kurtzman or Akiva Goldsman running these characters by hiring writers who probably don't like Star Trek or have never seen a fucking episode of Next Generation or Voyager or Deep Space Nine. These people that are writing Discovery, I bet you have never sat through and watched every episode of Star Trek. They looked at memes. They saw stuff on the internet, the "Make It So" stickers and all of that stuff, and they're like, "Oh, that's we know what to do." That's what it feels like. Okay, you can't knock me on my feeling. That's what it feels like. That's what I get from all this other Trek. And Terry Matalas has been a PA on Voyager. Um, he's been around. Now, the direction of this episode, I thought was great. I thought the it looked good. Um, that's no question. The directions of these episodes, they're always great. Um, the way they're edited, all that stuff. The performances, Shaw in this show. How long has Sadie just been standing there? Hey, baby, what's up? Yeah, she's like, wait, what are you doing? Anyway, uh, so where was I? Oh yeah, she looks like a tribble. It's a tribble, an advanced hybrid of sorts. But anyway, yeah, this show needs to, if they're gonna do a spin-off, it needs to be Terry Matalas handling those characters. Okay, you cannot have whoever's handling the cast of Friends, which is Discovery, Strange New Worlds. You can't do that with this. Okay, you've created Shaw, uh, Sidney LaForge. Those are like the two main stars of that crew. No offense to the rest of them, but that's really what the focal point of the show. Plus, you have the bald Vulcan, who I guess is all right, serviceable for what she did. There's nothing that she's done as a character wise, that made me go like, "Oh, I got to see more of her." It's just like, "Oh, cool. It's a Vulcan, a science officer. It's cool." So, um, but yeah, but this episode, I did enjoy uh this cameo that we got here in the very beginning. Ooh, lower that. Paramount's already like, don't you fucking play my clips, man. Don't play my clips. Calm down. Where is the fair use? Anyway. All right. So we got 7 of 9. And look who's there on the screen. We've got Mr. Tuvok from Star Trek Voyager. Now, when his voice was on the view screen, I went, "Oh, I just watched episodes of Voyager." I'm like in this Star Trek kick, so I'm watching Star Trek Voyager also, and I was like, "I know whose voice that is. I know whose voice that is." And as the camera turns around, it reveals it's Tuvok, who was also in Star Trek Generations, but not really related to the character of Tuvok, I don't believe. He was a Starfleet officer there. But it was great to see him, and this is the opening of this episode was 7 of 9 interrogating Tuvok because they're looking for Commander Riker, or sorry, been watching a lot of Next Generation also, Captain Riker, and so because Captain Riker was captured in the last episode, this was a Riker-less episode, which I missed him. I was like, where is he at? Oh, I miss his speeches and his ways. He's kind of like the Kirk of the Next Generation, which I absolutely dig. But he's also his own character. But anyway, so it opens up with this, and You get the nice Star Trek Voyager theme kicking in, which is also it's one of my favorite Star Trek themes, which is the Star Trek Voyager main theme. And so that was nice to hear with the scene playing in the background. But then something happens and she's quizzing him on all these questions, and then he gets an answer wrong about, Vulcans visiting a certain um place, gets the question wrong, reveals himself to be the changeling, um, reveals himself that, that Riker may be dead, may be alive, who knows. So we get this opening, and once we get into all of that stuff, we soon later find out, that Data, this new version of Data, he can pretty much figure out, you know, uh, the situation which is happening right now. Which I have to say, there is a really great minute or two moment between Geordi and Brent Spiner's, lore and Data character, which I thought was great when lore decided to lower, the force fields that held, Vatic and the changelings, when they were capturing them on the Titan, when they were imprisoning them. Crusher had Vatic there, and what an intense moment between a mother and this person, which the mother, you see Beverly Crusher's motherly instincts kick in hardcore. And I thought, holy fuck, you never saw her perform this way with Wesley Crusher. God, Wesley Crusher, I can't believe Wesley Crusher doesn't even feel like he belongs in this world right now. I had to drink my coffee there. It's early in the morning while I'm doing this video. Wanted to get this video out. Didn't want to do it because it wasn't an episode that I was like, oh my gosh, this episode was a banger. No, it's just I was like, I could wait, but no later than Friday. These reviews come out usually Thursday afternoons, Friday mornings. So but we got 3 more episodes left. 3 more. So anyway, where was I at? Oh yeah, Beverly Crusher, Jean-Luc Picard. And I love the Star Trekky discussions that they had in that scene where they were kind of like, well, talking about the moral issue of this, because Beverly Crusher was ready to murder this person. Um, and you understand because that's a mother trying to protect her child. Jean-Luc Picard, same thing. And the moment between Geordi and Data, which I was going to get into, I needed that. I needed that. I think the fans needed that also because this whole weird thing with Picard and Data, which I mean, kind of began in the movies because they were trying to make Data the Spock of the motion pictures. Then Data dies in Nemesis, and they threw in this storyline where it was like, what the fuck, like they were lovers at some point, or boyfriend and boyfriend, or whatever it was that they were trying to do. It wasn't just a simple friendship. And it wasn't something that you could sit there and go, well, it makes sense because, they were on the Enterprise together for that long and their relationship formed. We never got that. It just happened. Um, it just didn't really sit right with me. It was Geordi and Data who were best friends. It was Geordi and Data who were those two on Next Gen. They were always around each other. Even when Data dies in Nemesis, not a lot of people notice. But the camera was always on Geordi LaForge, as you see the explosion in space. And I felt like John Logan, who wrote the script for Nemesis, understood that. Geordi was the last person Data, like Data flew out of the Enterprise, and Geordi kind of like nodded his head, like, you know, yeah, this is the end. And Geordi sitting there on the bridge looking at the explosion in space. I mean, just go back and watch Nemesis. It's there. The shots were there. You intentionally had Geordi on every angle, and you see him watching that, and you can't really tell if he's crying. I mean, you can tell he's sad, but he's blind. He's got the implants in his eyes. I don't think they can create tear ducts, but if he could sob, he would have. So this moment in this episode when he was trying to plead to get his feelings out to Data through lore, talking about how he is a better father, how he's a better person because of him. We've never heard Geordi do this, and it was long overdue. But when he was saying those words, man, ooh, it got me, because that's a friendship you saw for 7 years on television. Even in Star Trek Generations, those two had a great 2-minute scene together. Um it was always Geordi and Data, always. So that was a great moment. Did it work? As far as making lore go, oh, okay, I should do the right thing? No. So the stakes were high. Stakes were really high. Um, and after the backstory of Vatic and all of that stuff, with the changelings and everything that happened, it was kind of an underwhelming episode. But again, it was an exposition episode. It's the episode, it's the part of the story, it's the act, or it's the part in an act, in a script, in a movie, where they fill you in on the details. What is going on, who is what, and what the hell are we going to do? Vatic and her people took over the USS Titan. Vatic is now the captain of the Titan. She took over the ship, and the episode ends there. And is it the weakest of the episodes so far? Yes, but not in the sense that it's boring or stupid or bad or whatever. It's a little slow because again, we're pushing a little bit on the brakes here and getting all of the information. We're figuring out why they want somewhat Jack Crusher, something with the disease, the genetic disease that Picard had that went to Jack Crusher. We're still trying to figure out who is Jack Crusher really. You know, um, Amanda Plummer. She's good. She's good. She is a very over the top villain, and I think that she's there amongst the probably the top 10 Star Trek villains, but she's not the Star Trek villain, not the greatest for me. I would say obviously the greatest Star Trek villain um, was obviously Khan, because Khan started the whole vengeance thing in Star Trek. Uh, but I like to think that Star Trek villains are also not human. Um, there are things in space that are considered evil. I guess essentially, I think by logic, there is a lot of Star Trek villains. they're not just humans who want, revenge. But, she's good. She's good. Does her character take me out of the show? No, not at all. Um, it's tolerable. It's serviceable. It's a villain. You need a villain for a series movie. So, and Amanda Plummer definitely plays that well. So, but anyway, so it's a much more slower episode, but it's also an episode that I think is needed. So hopefully next week's episode, we start picking up the momentum just a little bit. We start figuring out more things because we've got two more after that, and that's it. That's it. A lot of people are signing off of Star Trek after this. And that doesn't mean that you dislike the franchise. It just means that you choose what kind of Star Trek you want to watch. If you don't like Star Trek Discovery, it's not because, don't assume because that person is whatever you think in their head. They just don't like it because it's not Star Trek to them. And you can't force them to see things your way by retaliating online, saying, "Oh, well, you don't get it," or or questioning the logic of their question. I guess you could say, I mean, you could ask questions, but don't ridicule someone for not liking something that you like because chances are you love something that I don't, but I'm not going to tell you to see things my way. I'm just glad you do. We have a franchise that we can celebrate all together, except something in that franchise that you and I probably don't see eye to eye. That's fine. Everything else we love. It's the common ground that we can share. And I tell that to a lot of people. Um, you've got these uppy puppy, yippy dippity, podcasters out there that love everything, and they seem so cool to hang out with and talk to. But the minute you say, "Well, I don't really like that," they're like, "Whoa, what do you mean? What do you mean?" And you're a bigot. So that's what they do. That's what they do. They just this, oh, I don't want to talk to you anymore because you don't like this. It's not how you gain followers. It's not how you gain fans. It's not how you operate. So yeah. But anyway, but that's it for today for this review for Dominion. I liked it. I thought it was really okay. This season so far has been awesome. So this is a great show so far. So but I would watch this episode 10 times over any of the episodes that The Mandalorian has released. Um so yeah, this is the way. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this video, for this review for Star Trek Picard, Episode 7, Dominion. I will be back with more reviews like this and more. And yeah, I've got to go to work in a little bit. I got to go to that place where everyone acts like everything is. Oh, if I say too much, I might get in trouble. Anyway, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I will be back. But until then, I'm out. Peace.